The knock came at 2:07 a.m. Not a polite knock, not a sorry to disturb you knock. This was the kind of knock that meant business. Hard, insistent, the kind that wakes you from a dead sleep and makes your heart race before you're even fully conscious. I was already awake, of course. I had been awake for 3 hours, sitting in the dark of my home office, watching the security feeds on my laptop, waiting for exactly this moment. The doorbell rang, then more knocking. "Police, open up!" I closed the laptop, slipped it into the hidden compartment behind my bookshelf, and walked calmly to the front door. My footsteps were measured, unhurried. I had learned a long time ago that panic was the enemy of survival. I opened the door. 2 uniformed officers stood on my porch, badges gleaming in the yellow glow of the porch light. Behind them, a patrol car sat in my driveway, lights flashing silently, and behind the officer standing on the walkway, with tears streaming down her face, was my wife, Simone. She was wearing the silk robe I had bought her for our anniversary, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her mascara running in perfect streaks down her cheeks. She looked devastated, heartbroken, like a woman whose world had just shattered. She was a remarkable actress, I had to give her that. Mr. Weston Carrington, the lead officer, young, maybe mid-30s, with a nameplate that read Marsh, had his hand resting on his service weapon. That's me. "Sir, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and theft. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." He continued reciting my Miranda rights, but I wasn't listening. I was watching Simone. The way she dabbed at her eyes with the tissue that had been pre-positioned in her robe pocket. The way she leaned against the porch railing like she might collapse at any moment. The way she glanced at me just once, just for a second, with a look of pure triumph before resuming her performance of grief. She thought she had won. She had no idea. "Do you understand these rights as I've explained them to you?" "I do." "Turn around, please." "Hands behind your back," I complied. The handcuffs were cold against my wrists, a sensation I hadn't felt in 8 years. Not since the last time I was arrested. That time it had been in a warehouse in Bogota, surrounded by men who wanted to cut me into pieces and ship me back to Washington in a body bag. These handcuffs felt almost nostalgic. "Weston." Simone rushed forward, reaching for me, her voice cracking with perfectly calibrated anguish. "I'm so sorry." I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence. She broke off, sobbing. "How could you do this to us, to our children?" I looked at her. Really? Looked at her, at the woman I had married 13 years ago, the mother of my children, the person I had trusted more than anyone else in the world. "Take care of Emmy and Felix," said quietly. "Tell them I love them." "I will." She reached out and touched my face, her fingers cold. "I'm so sorry, Weston." I didn't respond. Officer Marsh led me to the patrol car and helped me into the back seat. As we pulled away from the house, I looked through the rear window. Simone was standing on the porch watching me go, her hand pressed to her mouth in a gesture of shock. But I could see her smile. Just for a moment, when she thought no one was looking, the mask slipped. Her lips curled upward. Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. And she looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had just destroyed her husband and gotten away with it. Or so she thought. The ride to the police station took 18 minutes. I spent them in silence, watching the dark streets roll by, running through the timeline in my head. 3 months of preparation, 47 hours of audio recordings, over 200 photographs, bank records, email chains, text messages, videoages, surveillance, Everything I needed to destroy. Simone, Archer, and their entire conspiracy. I had let myself be arrested because I needed this to be official. I needed the charges on record. I needed the police department to process me, to enter my information into their system, to create a paper trail that couldn't be disputed or dismissed. And I needed Simone to believe absolutely and completely that she had won. Because when people think they've won, they get careless. They celebrate. They make mistakes. Simone was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The station was quiet at 2:30 in the morning. A few officers at their desks, a drunk sleeping it off in a holding cell, the low hum of fluorescent lights and computer fans. Officer Marsh led me to a processing area, removed my handcuffs, and began the intake procedure. "Empty your pockets, please." I complied. Wallet, phone, keys, a handful of change. "Any weapons, sharp objects, anything that could harm yourself or others?" "No." "Sit down over there. I need to run your information." I sat in a plastic chair against the wall while Marsh typed at his computer. He seemed bored, going through the motions of a routine arrest. Probably thought I was just another white-collar criminal, some accountant who got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He had no idea. I watched him type in my name, my date of birth, my social security number. Watched him hit enter. Watched the system start to process. And then, I watched his face change. First, confusion. His brow furrowed, his head tilted slightly to the side. Then surprise. His eyes widened. His fingers froze over the keyboard. Then fear. His face went pale. His mouth fell open. And he pushed back from his desk like the computer had just threatened to bite him. What the? He leaned forward, read something on the screen, then pushed back again. That can't be right. He typed something else, hit enter, read the results. His hands started to shake. "Officer," I kept my voice calm, curious. "Is there a problem?" He didn't answer. He was already reaching for his phone, punching in numbers with trembling fingers. "Captain, it's Marsh. I need you down here now." A pause. "Yes, sir, now. I know what time it is. This can't wait." Another pause. "I can't explain over the phone. You need to see this yourself." He hung up, looked at me, looked at the screen, looked at me again. "Mr. Carrington, I need to ask you to come with me." "Am I being moved to a holding cell?" "No, sir, to an interview room." And he hesitated, like he wasn't sure how to phrase what he wanted to say. "Would you like some coffee? Water? Anything?" Now I was officially interested. 2 minutes ago, I had been a fraud suspect in handcuffs. Now I was being offered refreshments. The system had done its job. Coffee would be nice. Black, no sugar. "Yes, sir." He led me to a small interview room. Beige walls, metal table, 2 chairs, and left me alone. The door didn't lock behind him. Through the small window, I could see him talking urgently with other officers, gesturing toward his computer, making more phone calls. I sat down and waited. Within 5 minutes, Captain Leland Grayson arrived. He was in his mid-50s, heavy-set, with the tired eyes of a man who had seen too much in his 30 years on the force. He walked into the interview room without knocking, a folder in his hand, a look of absolute bewilderment on his face. "Mr. Carrington." "That's me." He sat down across from me, set the folder on the table, and stared at me for a long moment. "I've been a cop for 32 years, he said finally. "I thought I'd seen everything, but I have never seen a file like yours." "What does my file say?" He opened the folder, I already knew what was inside. According to our system, you are a person of interest in exactly 0 ongoing investigations. You have no criminal record, no outstanding warrants, no traffic tickets. He paused. You also don't exist. I don't exist? Your fingerprints came back flagged. Level 5 classification access restricted to federal agencies with top-secret clearance. He looked up at me. Do you know what Level 5 means, Mr. Carrington? I have an idea. It means that whatever you are, whoever you are, you're way above my pay grade. It means I'm not even supposed to know you exist, let alone have you sitting in my interview room at 3 o'clock in the morning. The door opened. Officer Marsh entered with my coffee, set it carefully in front of me, and retreated to the corner of the room like he was afraid to get too close. I've already made calls, Captain Grayson continued. The FBI field office, the Department of Justice, everyone I could think of who might have answers. Do you know what they told me? I'm curious. They told me to hold you. Don't release you. Don't question you. Don't do anything except wait. He leaned back in his chair. Someone is coming. Someone very high up. And until they get here, I'm supposed to treat you like, and I quote, a visiting dignitary. I took a sip of my coffee. It was terrible. But I'd had worse in worse places. Captain, may I ask you a question? By all means. The fraud charges against me. The evidence that was submitted. Do you know where it came from? He flipped through the folder. Anonymous tip called in yesterday afternoon. Detailed accusations, supporting documentation, victim statements, looked airtight. He paused. Now I'm not so sure. The tip came from my wife. Grayson's eyebrows rose. Simone Carrington, the woman who was crying on my porch when your officers arrested me. She orchestrated the entire thing. The forged documents, the fake victim statements, everything. She's been planning this for 3 months. Why would your wife frame you for fraud? Because she's been having an affair for 3 years with a man named Archer Sinclair. Because she discovered a bank account in my name containing $2.1 million. And because she thought if she could get me arrested and convicted, she could divorce me while I was incarcerated and take everything. The house, the children, the money. Grayson stared at me. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Carrington. It's also true, and I have evidence. 47 hours of audio recordings, 200 photographs, video surveillance, bank records, and email chains that document every step of her conspiracy. If you have all that evidence, why didn't you come to us? Why let yourself be arrested? I smiled. Because I needed everything on the record. I needed her to think she had won. And I needed to be sitting in this room, in this station, with your officers and your systems. When the truth came out, the door opened again. A man walked in, tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than most people make in a month. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who was used to being in charge, used to walking into rooms and having everyone else defer to his presence. I recognized him immediately. Director Tobias Ives, FBI. Everyone out, he said. Now Grayson stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. Marsh was already gone before the director finished speaking. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone with one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in the country. Director Ives sat down across from me. Spectre, he said quietly. It's been a long time, Director. When I got the call, I couldn't believe it. Weston Carrington, arrested for fraud in some suburban town in California. I thought it had to be a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. I arranged it. His eyes narrowed. You arranged your own arrest? I needed to be processed through the system. I needed the charges documented officially. And I needed my wife to believe she had destroyed me. Your wife? He shook his head slowly. I've read the allegations, Weston. Fraud, embezzlement, theft from clients. Do you know how many people would have their careers destroyed by accusations like these? I do, and you let it happen deliberately. I did. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with the sharp eyes of a man who had spent 40 years reading people. Why? Because Simone has been planning to destroy me for 3 months. She and her lover, a man named Archer Sinclair, created forged documents, fabricated victim statements, and coordinated with a corrupt attorney named Priscilla Delaney to build a fraud case against me. Their goal was to get me arrested, divorced, and imprisoned while they took everything I have. And you knew this was happening. I discovered it in January. I've spent the last 3 months running a counterintelligence operation against my own wife. Director Ais was quiet for a moment. You ran a counterintelligence operation against your wife. She targeted a former CIA operative. She just didn't know it. I paused. I have everything, Director. Audio recordings of her and Archer planning the frame. Video of her forging documents in my home office. Bank records showing Archer paying off the attorney. Text messages, emails, phone logs. Enough evidence to charge all 3 of them with conspiracy, fraud, filing false police reports, and obstruction of justice. Where is this evidence? In a secure location. I'll need your help accessing it. My laptop is hidden in my home office, and Simone will be there. Director Ayas nodded slowly. I'll send a team. We'll secure the evidence and bring your wife in for questioning. He looked at me. The children, Emmy and Felix, 12 and 9. They're asleep at the house. They don't know anything about this. We'll make sure they're protected. That's all I want, Director. The children are innocent in all of this. He stood up, straightened his jacket. You know, Weston, most men in your position would have confronted their wife the moment they discovered the affair. Would have filed for divorce, fought it out in court, made a lot of noise. But not you. I was trained to be patient. Patient? He smiled slightly. You spent 18 years infiltrating criminal organizations. You took down cartels, arms dealers, human traffickers. You were one of the best operatives we ever had. He paused. And your wife thought she could outsmart you. She didn't know who I was. No. He walked to the door, then stopped and looked back at me. That's the thing about cover identities, isn't it? They work a little too well sometimes. The people closest to you don't know the real you. I thought about that for a moment. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe. He opened the door. Sit tight, Spectre. This is going to be a long night. Let me tell you who I really am. My name is Weston Thomas Carrington. I was born in 1975 in a small town in Virginia, the son of a factory worker and a school teacher. I was an unremarkable child in most ways. Decent grades, few friends. A quiet kid who spent most of his time reading books and taking apart electronics to see how they worked. But I had one gift that set me apart. I could become anyone. It started in high school. I would adopt different personas for different situations. The class clown with the jocks, the serious student with the teachers, the sensitive loner with the girls I wanted to impress. It wasn't manipulation exactly. It was more like acting, like slipping into costumes that fit different occasions. By the time I got to MIT, I had refined this ability into something more sophisticated. I could change my body language, my speech patterns, my entire demeanor to match whatever role I needed to play. I could convince anyone that I was whoever I claimed to be. The CIA noticed. They recruited me in 1998, my senior year of college. A man in a gray suit approached me after class, handed me a business card, and said 6 words that changed my life. Your country needs your talents. 3 months later, I was at a training facility in Virginia, learning the skills that would define the next 18 years of my existence. Surveillance, counter-surveillance, interrogation, resistance, hand-to-hand combat, weapons proficiency, demolitions, languages. I eventually became fluent in 7. But my primary skill was infiltration. My ability to become other people, to adopt identities so completely that even I sometimes forgot who I really was. They gave me a code name, Spectre. For 18 years, I was a ghost. I infiltrated drug cartels in Colombia, arms-dealing networks in Eastern Europe, human trafficking rings in Southeast Asia. I spent months, sometimes years, building covers, gaining trust, gathering intelligence that brought down some of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. I was arrested 17 times, shot 3 times, tortured twice. I watched friends die. I killed people who needed killing, and through it all, I remained invisible, a specter. By 2016, I was 41 years old. I had 2 children, Emmy 4 and Felix 1, and a wife who thought I was an IT consultant who traveled frequently for work. I had missed first steps and first words and countless bedtime stories. I had seen things that gave me nightmares I couldn't explain to anyone. I was tired, so I retired. The agency set me up with a pension fund, $2.1 million, a lifetime of danger pay and hazard bonuses, and a cover story. Weston Carrington, IT consultant. Boring, forgettable. Exactly what I needed. I thought I could finally have a normal life. A wife, children, backyard barbecues and soccer games, and lazy Sunday mornings. I was wrong. I met Simone in 2010 during a brief leave between operations. She was working as an event planner for a charity gala I attended. Beautiful and charming, and exactly what I needed after 6 months undercover in a Russian arms network. We talked for hours, exchanged numbers, went to dinner the following week. She seemed so normal, so refreshingly, blessedly normal. Within 6 months, I was in love. Within a year, we were married. My handler, Harlan Northwood, warned me. He had seen too many operatives marry civilian women only to watch those marriages crumble under the weight of secrets and absences. She doesn't know who you are, he said. What happens when she finds out? She won't find out. Everyone finds out eventually, Weston. But I ignored him. I was in love, and I was arrogant, and I believed that I could compartmentalize my life forever. Emmy was born in 2012, Felix in 2015, and for a few years everything seemed perfect. I missed birthdays and anniversaries due to business trips. I came home with injuries I couldn't explain. I woke up screaming from nightmares about things I could never share. But Simone seemed to understand. She never pushed, never demanded answers, never questioned the inconsistencies in my stories. Looking back, I think that was the first red flag. A normal wife would have been suspicious. A normal wife would have wanted to know why her husband disappeared for weeks at a time, why he came home with bruises, why he sometimes stared at walls for hours without speaking. Simone never asked, because she didn't care. She had married me for what she thought I would provide: stability, comfort, wealth. When I retired in 2016 and we moved to a modest suburban house with a modest income, the disappointment set in. She had expected more. She had expected the business trips to translate into a lavish lifestyle, not a 3-bedroom house with a Honda in the driveway. I noticed the change gradually, the sighs when she looked at her closet, the complaints about our neighbors' vacations, the way she looked at other women's jewelry with barely concealed envy. I tried to make her happy, surprised her with trips, gifts, romantic dinners, but nothing was ever enough. There was always something more she wanted, something better she deserved. By 2020, we were strangers sharing a house. We slept in the same bed, but barely touched. We ate dinner together, but rarely talked. The children were the only reason we still functioned as a family. I should have seen what was coming. But after 18 years of reading people, of detecting lies and hidden agendas, I had let my guard down with the one person I trusted most. That was my mistake. I discovered the affair in November 2023. It wasn't intuition that tipped me off. It was training. Old habits die hard. Even in civilian life, I found myself cataloging details, noticing patterns, filing away information that might be useful someday. And over the course of several months, the patterns started to add up. Simone's phone, always face down on the table. New passwords on her accounts changed without explanation. Business trips that coincided with my own absences, trips I later realized she wasn't taking at all. I installed surveillance. Not on her phone, not on her computer. Too obvious, too easily detected. Instead, I placed tiny cameras in the house, hidden in places she would never think to look. I monitored her movements through the GPS in her car. I set up alerts for any large withdrawals from our joint accounts. Within a week, I had confirmation. Archer Sinclair, 44 years old, wealthy businessman, old money family. The kind of man who wore expensive suits and drove expensive cars and thought he was entitled to anything he wanted, including my wife. They met at hotels. They took trips together while I was working. They exchanged gifts, messages, promises. He told her he would leave his wife. She told him she would leave me. I watched it all. For 2 months, I did nothing. Just watched, gathered evidence, built a file, and then, in January 2024, I discovered something worse. Simone had found my pension fund. I don't know how. Maybe she snooped through my papers. Maybe she hired someone to look into my finances. Maybe Archer helped her. But she had discovered the $2.1 million sitting in an account she knew nothing about. She assumed I was hiding money from her, assumed I had been stealing from clients, embezzling funds, building a secret fortune while pretending to be a modest IT consultant. She was partly right. I had been hiding money, but not stolen money. Money I had earned through 18 years of risking my life for my country. Money that was mine legally and legitimately protected by federal law. She didn't know that. She didn't know anything about my real past, and she decided to use that money as her exit strategy. The fraud scheme was Archer's idea. I learned this from the recordings. He had experience with financial crimes, had gotten away with shady dealings for years, and he saw an opportunity. If they could frame me for fraud, I would be arrested and almost certainly convicted. While I sat in prison, Simone could divorce me, claim the house and children, and eventually discover the hidden money. They brought in Priscilla Delaney, an attorney Archer knew from previous dealings. She helped them create the framework, forged client complaints, fabricated evidence of embezzlement. a paper trail that pointed directly at me. They were thorough. I had to give them credit for that. If I had been anyone else, if I had been the mild-mannered IT consultant I pretended to be, their plan would have worked. But I wasn't anyone else. I spent 3 months preparing my counter-operation. I let them believe their plan was undetected. I continued my normal routine. Went to work, came home, played with my children, slept next to my wife without ever letting her see the rage that burned inside me. I gathered evidence. Every conversation between Simone and Archer recorded. Every document she forged, photographed. Every payment Archer made to Priscilla traced. I built a case so airtight that no jury in the world would acquit them. And I waited. I waited for them to spring their trap. Waited for the anonymous tip to the police. Waited for the 2 a.m. arrest that would convince them they had won. Because I knew something they didn't. The moment they filed those false charges, they committed federal crimes. And the moment I revealed my true identity, those crimes would be investigated by agencies far more powerful than any local police department. Simone thought she was destroying a nobody. She was actually destroying herself. The FBI team arrived at my house at 4:30 a.m. I watched from a monitor in the police station as they pulled up in unmarked vehicles, surrounded the property, and knocked on the front door. Simone answered in her bathrobe, looking confused, then frightened as they explained why they were there. "Mrs. Carrington, we have a warrant to search these premises. Please step outside." "What? Why? My husband was just arrested." "This is related to that arrest. Please cooperate." They found my laptop exactly where I had hidden it. They found the surveillance equipment, the external hard drives, the backup files I'd stored in a fireproof safe in the garage. Everything was cataloged, tagged, and removed as evidence. And then they found something else. In Simone's home office, the one she thought I never entered, they discovered a stack of forged documents. Client complaints that had been fabricated on her computer. Fake invoices with my signature copied and pasted. A draft of the anonymous tip she had sent to the police. She had kept it all. Some criminals are smart enough to destroy evidence. Simone was not one of them. By 6 a.m., she was in handcuffs. By 7 a.m., Archer Sinclair had been picked up at his downtown apartment. By 8 a.m., Priscilla Delaney was under arrest at her law office, surrounded by clients and colleagues who watched in horror as federal agents led her away. And by 9 a.m., I was home. Emmy and Felix were still asleep when I walked through the front door. My mother-in-law, Simone's mother, who had been called to watch the children, stood in the living room looking confused and angry. "What is happening?" she demanded. "Where is my daughter?" "In federal custody. She's been arrested for conspiracy, fraud, and filing false police reports." "That's impossible. Simone would never." "She did. I have proof. And now she's going to face the consequences." I walked past her up the stairs to the bedrooms where my children slept. Emmy was curled up with her stuffed rabbit, her dark hair spread across the pillow. Felix was sprawled on his back, mouth open, making the little snoring sounds I had missed so many nights over the years. I stood in the doorway, watching them breathe. These were the people who mattered. Not Simone, not Archer, not the money or the house or anything else. Just my children. I had spent 18 years protecting strangers. Now I was going to protect the 2 people who actually needed me. The trials took place over the following year. Simone, Archer, and Priscilla were each charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false police reports, and obstruction of justice. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Not just my recordings and surveillance, but the FBI's own investigation, which uncovered additional crimes I hadn't even known about. Archer, it turned out, had been embezzling from his own company for years. He had planned to use Simone's share of my hidden money to cover his losses before anyone noticed. When investigators started pulling at that thread, his entire financial house of cards collapsed. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial. 15 years in federal prison. Priscilla tried to fight. She claimed she had been manipulated by Simone and Archer, that she had no idea the documents she helped create were fraudulent. The jury didn't believe her. 10 years. And Simone. She went to trial. She hired the best lawyers money could buy. Archer's money, what was left of it. And she fought every charge with everything she had. It wasn't enough. The recordings destroyed her. Her own voice, planning my destruction, played in open court for everyone to hear. Her smug laughter as she discussed taking my children. Her cold calculations about how much money she would get. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 12 years in federal prison. I was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. I watched her face crumble. Watched her turn toward me with something like desperation in her eyes. "Weston," she said, "please, the children will be taken care of." I said, "By me." I walked out of the courtroom and never looked back. Explaining everything to Emmy and Felix was the hardest thing I've ever done. Not the arrests, not the trials, not any of the operational challenges I faced during my years with the agency. Sitting down with my 12-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old son and explaining why their mother was going to prison. I kept it simple, age-appropriate. I told them that their mother had made some very bad choices, that she had broken the law, and that she had to face consequences for what she did. "Is it because of you?" Emmy asked. "Did she do something bad to you?" "Yes, sweetheart. She tried to hurt me, but she got caught." "Are you okay?" "I'm okay, and I'm going to be here for you. Both of you. Always." Felix didn't say much. He just climbed into my lap and held on the way he used to when he was a toddler and something scared him. I held him back. Over the following months, we settled into a new routine. I took a consulting job that allowed me to work from home. The agency helped arrange it. One last favor for an old operative. I made breakfast every morning, drove the kids to school, helped with homework, attended every soccer game and dance recital. I was finally the father I should have been from the beginning. The kids asked about their mother. Sometimes I arranged supervised phone calls, facilitated visits to the federal prison where she was housed. I didn't want them to hate her. I didn't want them to grow up with that kind of poison in their hearts. But I also didn't pretend she was innocent. When they were old enough, I showed them some of the evidence. Not the worst of it, but enough to understand that their mother had made choices with consequences. "Why did she do it?" Emmy asked me once. "Didn't she love us?" "I think she loved you," I said carefully. "But she loved money more, and she made the mistake of thinking those things were the same. They're not. No, sweetheart, they're not." 2 years have passed since that night. I'm 51 now, still living in the same house, though I've redecorated most of the rooms, erasing traces of Simone, replacing them with photographs of me and the children, artwork Emmy made, certificates from Felix's baseball league. Emmy is 14, a teenager now, with all the drama and intensity that entails. She's discovered makeup and boys and social media, and she keeps me on my toes in ways that no CIA training ever prepared me for. Felix is 11. He's quieter than his sister, more introspective. He likes computers like his father, though he doesn't know the half of it. And he's already building programs that impress his teachers. They know who I am now. Not everything, not the names of operations, not the people I've killed, not the darkest chapters of my career, but the broad strokes. They know their father was a government operative. They know he did dangerous work for a long time. They know he retired to be with them. I showed Emmy my Medal of Intelligence Merit last year. It's the highest award the CIA gives to its officers. I kept it hidden for years, but I wanted her to understand that her father's life wasn't always boring at consulting. "You were a spy?" she asked, wide-eyed. "Something like that." "That's so cool." She paused. "Is that why Mom couldn't trick you?" "Partly. Mostly. It's because I loved you and Felix too much to let anyone take you away from me." She hugged me tight, fierce, the kind of hug she used to give when she was little. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart." Director Ives reached out a few months ago. "The agency needs consultants," he said. "Experienced operatives who can advise on current operations without going back into the field. Good pay, flexible hours, a way to use my skills without risking my life." I told him I'd think about it. The truth is, I'm not sure I want to go back to that world, even in an advisory capacity. I spent 18 years as a ghost. I don't want to be a ghost anymore. I want to be a father, a real one, present, available, the person my children run to when they're scared or happy or confused. That's worth more than any mission. Sometimes I think about Simone. Not often. Mostly I've moved past the anger and the betrayal. But occasionally, late at night, I wonder what she's doing. Whether she regrets what she did. Whether she thinks about the children she lost. She still has 7 years left on her sentence. She'll be released when Emmy is 21 and Felix is 18. By then, they'll be adults capable of deciding for themselves whether they want a relationship with her. I won't try to influence that decision. Whatever they choose, I'll support them. But I also won't pretend that what she did was anything other than what it was. A calculated attempt to destroy me and take everything I had built. She would have watched me rot in prison. She would have turned my children against me. She would have taken my money, my home, my dignity without a second thought. She didn't know who I was. That was her mistake. I spent 18 years learning to read people, to detect lies, to see through the masks that everyone wears. And when the woman I loved tried to destroy me, I saw through her too. I let her think she had won. I let her celebrate her victory. And then I took everything away from her, just as she had planned to take everything from me. Some people would call that revenge. I call it justice. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it sounds like something from a movie. A retired CIA operative arrested for fraud at 2 a.m., revealing his true identity when the system flags his classified file. A wife who tried to frame her husband, not knowing he was one of the most decorated intelligence officers in American history. But it happened, every word of it. The police knocked on my door at 2:07 a.m. They arrested me for crimes I didn't commit, and within hours, they discovered that I wasn't the person my wife thought I was. "Sir, why didn't you tell us who you really are?" That's what Director Ives asked me, and the answer was simple. I needed Simone to believe she had won. I needed her to feel safe, confident, triumphant. Because that's when people make mistakes. That's when they let their guard down. She thought she was destroying a nobody. She was wrong. Now, I want to ask you something. What would you do if your spouse tried to frame you for a crime? Would you fight immediately, hire lawyers, make noise? Or would you stay quiet, gather evidence, and wait for the perfect moment to strike? Have you ever had to pretend to be weaker than you really are? Have you ever let someone think they had won, only to reveal that you were in control the entire time? Drop your answer in the comments.